I'm Margaret Graziano, Maji, and this is the podcast Work Liberated. If you're interested in empowerment in how you operate at work with others, you'll definitely want to tune in today for a conversation with Bina Bendale. Did I say that right?
You did.
Did I?
Thank you.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Woo! She's a certified board nurse coach and founder of Silent Struggle. She's got over 20 years of experience supporting individuals and companies to navigate the silent struggles happening under the surface. She specializes in stress management and creating strategies to recalibrate and empower teams. And given one of my top keynote talks is Response Agility, moving friction to flow, I have a lot of interest in what Bina has to say. So welcome, Bina.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
So you and I met actually at an HR conference. We both are speakers in the HR world because bigger than the HR world, but the HR is the department in most companies who is aware of the silent struggles because they provide support. So tell me, how did you go from being were you ever a nurse?
I was a bedside nurse for 18 years.
I'd like to understand the journey of bedside nurse to coaching.
Yeah. So I have 3 beautiful children. And when my eldest was born, he is grossly delayed and has severe autism, which I didn't know at the time. But, he was developmentally wasn't hitting his milestones. And we were in and out of ICU a lot. And long story short, there was no solution for me. It was either I had the choice from HR to quit my job or to reduce my hours, which at that point in time was not feasible either way, because 1, I was the breadwinner, and 2, I carried the insurance at that time.
What year around was this?
This was in 2014.
Okay,
2014.
So not that long ago.
No.
Not that long ago. 10 years.
No, 10 years. And there was no solutions. They sent me to the employee assistant program, and every person I spoke to was just like, well, we've never dealt with this. And they weren't understanding the struggles I was having with the child with disabilities. And a lot of the times I kept getting stated, well, you're a nurse, you know how to do this. You're a nurse, you should know how to handle this. And I'm like, I'm a mom right now. Like, the nursing went away, and the worst case scenarios were coming out. And that's where my highest anxiety came in. On top of that, I had postpartum depression, which didn't help. That didn't help any of my situation.
Right.
And as the years went along, my son was getting better and comes in. I started noticing more and more at bedside, a lot of kids that were autistic or a lot of kids with disabilities, and in the healthcare system, how they just were treated differently, or how they were, the parents weren't really being heard, or they were scared and they were just sitting in the room with like deers with the headlights on, and they're just seeing their local
nurse. You were still
I was still ill at the nurse.
Still a nurse.
Still at bedside.
Got your child with challenges.
Yep.
You're struggling with those challenges. And now you're noticing, hey, this is happening everywhere.
Everywhere. Wow. And so that's when I really realized that my bigger passion or my purpose on this world is bigger than just what I'm doing. And I love nursing. I loved bedside. I was a trauma nurse. I loved it. But my passion really started going towards those parents and gravitating towards them. And when we did have difficult cases, management, staff, the charge nurse was like, oh, put Bina with the family. And that's really when I was just like, you know what? I need to create something around this. And that's how it came in.
Let's pause right there. That's great. So as you're talking, I'm thinking about all of the clients that I have. I work with mostly the C-suite, and then my coaches work with those that either surround the C-suite or report to the C-suite. But I just think about the people in our family of keen alignment who are working the work during the day. You know, they're They're working, I would say, sometimes, especially in the last 4 years, with all the change, kind of struggling through work or
Right.
slogging some days. 50% of the time, it's tough. And then they go home and they've
Hmm.
got kids with ADHD,
Hmm.
kids with autism, kids with learning disabilities, a partner with learning
Right.
disabilities or autism or ADHD. And I'm wondering how much added stress to the psyche does it add when you're caring for somebody and you don't have answers and you don't know what to do for them in that moment?
So the general rule of thumb is that if you have a delayed in one notation, whether it's gross motor, fine motor, speech, hearing, in a different realm,
A
it's like
delayed development in the
correct.
household.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so in each one is as if, so if I was delayed in speech, then I would then like, it's like caring for me plus four children, or it's caring for me plus four other human beings, because you're making up for that in a way in your household.
Now, what
So,
if it's not a delay? What if it's like
right.
ADHD, where where they're all, is that considered a delay? Because I
It's not
thought that
considered a
ADHD
delay.
kids were
It's
super
not.
smart.
They can be, but they also need routine. They also need structure, which again, it's the
Extra care.
psychological port. The psychological support behind it is if an adult, all three of my children have ADHD. If my morning routine is off, my children are off. That means mommy is off, and that means my husband is off, and so it's like, but we had to learn that. We had to adapt that. And so it's like you're learning your child and what they like and they don't like, but then you're also learning your boundaries and you're also
Mm.
learning on top of that. So do you see how that's like not only your child, but now that's you, it's your husband integrating with the two or three other children in your house. Maybe the grandparents are in your house. Maybe there's other people that are living with you, right? They all have to adapt to the same system. So it's extra
How do you come
energy
in? So, how do you come in? What's
as
your
a
intervention points? Like, let's say that's my family. Let's say you just described my family,
Mhm.
and I'm listening to this saying, oh my gosh, yeah, we see a counselor, but they don't help with everything she just said. Those inner dynamics, the human
Mhm.
system, the structures. Is that what you do? You come in and you coach? And if so, tell me how that would work if I was the person you just described.
So there's two different ways to approach that. So first of all, I really listen to the parents or the person is really struggling with it, because there's a lot it like with children with disabilities for the parents side, right? There might be a lot of like hate, anger that's built up, resentment that's built up, like why me, why my child, why am I going through this, how come I'm not
Oh, like
sleeping,
hate, not for the child, but
child,
for
but
like the
internal.
situation. Why,
Correct.
why is this
Why?
happening to me
Right. And then
versus
once
happening for me?
exactly. And then once we kind of get through that and really understand that it's, it's just, it is what it is, or however you might overcome that, then it
Mm.
comes out to like a real energy check in your house, you know? And I'm a real big believer with parents or parenting or even with your children, right?
Wait,
If they're
stop,
able to
stop.
talk. Hmm.
You got to stop. Energy check.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So what that means is when you're asking, like, I'm going to ask you, like Maggie, right now, if you were to give yourself 100%, like 100% fully charged, like our cell phones, fully charged, you're ready to go, woohoo, like you're going around, right? In your own self, where are you currently right now?
80.
Correct. So that means there's a 20% depletion, right? I'm not saying everybody's going to be at 100%, but what that means now is that if I know you're at 80% and there is somebody that comes in with 100% energy, your energy levels are not going to really pass. There's going to be a little bit of depletion that's happening. And so as we deplete throughout the day, it's really understanding that you might be tired, You might be tired for not wanting to do something because it takes up more energy. And I'm just using dishes as an example because that's the easiest one for people to understand, right? You might be at 80%, but you might want to focus your energy with your family. You might want to focus with your husband or your partner, or you want to take your kids out to the park. And you know that is what's going to take up more of your energy, whereas leaving the dishes in the sink, which is like, that can be done in maybe 20, 30 minutes. So it's like
them to measure their energy or at least talk about it, kind of like a climate check. How are you feeling?
Yeah.
But it's like an energy barometer.
Yeah.
And if we look at energy, we could look at the vibrational flow.
Yeah.
See, I thought 80 meant really good for me because that's like the vibrational flow of 800. But I get your point. I'm not at 1,000, and what would have me get to fully charged. And I guess if somebody comes in and says, man, I'm at 40.
Yeah.
And I could see even in the workplace, knowing that somebody's walking in at a 40, you might not give them the big ass project that day.
Right.
You might say, you gotta go get your energy, your batteries charged because I got a really big project and I'm going to need your highest and best. I really like that. I like that energy check. So could you really say to your husband, listen, my energy's at a 40. I'm not doing the dishes. You're doing the dishes. How does it work like that?
Well, we come up with different agreements, right? And it also goes back to the agreements around our energy check. I'm going to just to give you a great example, what happened to us yesterday. My son he came home sick, and my husband was just like, Bina, I have this work lunch. I have to be here. I'm physically not going to be home. And I said, you know what? That's fine. I will take the child and we'll go do some. He'll be home with mom. And as the day went down, my energy level went, because now I'm in mom mode and I'm working at the same time. So my depletion went down real quick. Dinner, pick up kids, all of it fell underneath me. And as soon as he came home at 7:00, he says, Bina, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm at 10%. He goes,
so you guys have this nomenclature. You have this communication. I love it. And then what did he do when he found out you were at 10%?
He was just like, well, Bina, I'm at 30%. And he says, I just to have enough energy to give the kids a bath and to get them to bed. I said, great. And he goes, we both looked at the kitchen. It was cleaned up, but again, dishes piled up again. And I was just like, well, I'm just going to leave this overnight and I will do this in the morning. And we both agreed. We're just like, that's fine, because right now, whatever 20% difference that we have, the energy is now going to the kids because it takes 20%, if not depletes you, to give the kids a bath.
What I love about what you're doing, well, first of all, I don't want to forget, so I'll write it down, but what if you have somebody who doesn't buy into that? But we could talk about that in a minute. But as you were, I could see the dishes over there, and then you're like, yeah, I'm just not going to deal with that right now. I remember when I was raising my kids, the dishes had to be done. The house had to be set up for tomorrow. There was so much in my brain about what an ideal parent. You get the bath time and you read the story, and even exhausted, like you couldn't even I couldn't hold your eyes open, and I'm acting like James and the Giant Peach is the best thing that's ever happened.
Right.
But I'm pulling myself to it. And you know what I notice about myself now? My kids are having kids of their own now. They're in their 30s and 40s, believe it or not. But mostly 30s. Is that there are times where I'll say, okay, there's only so many hours in a day, those dishes or preparing for my next talk. Right. Those dishes or going to Orange Theory. And I'm not saying dishes are petty, because it could get gross if you leave them in too many days, but there are things that are just not critical to our happiness. Right. Where being healthy and working out, or being prepared when you're going to an audition or going to get a big new opportunity, like what's the highest and best for this? Like you said, when you went from nursing full-time to coaching, you got like, oh, this is my calling.
Yeah.
Nursing was a profession, but this is my calling. What's highest and best for the calling? And so I love that energy check.
Yeah.
Now, what happens if you're partnered with somebody who says, I don't give a rat's ass about your energy. We got to get this shit done.
That's when it comes back down to communication. I really do believe that's when I call them a heart-centered call or a heart-centered conversation, not hard calls. Those are heart-centered calls. Because a lot of the times when people are like, no, I'm not doing this, or no, I'm not doing that. That's also
Coach Nina's, that's Coach Bina's psychobabble.
Right. But that's really when it's, from my experience, and this has happened between me and my husband too. Like, he was not on this board. But then, like, when we really got to the root of it, like really came down and really understood each other, right? It's just like, why are you against this? Like, what's going on, right? Really, truly listening to the story versus projecting my feelings on him. It really came down to, well, why don't you like this? Why are you resistant? What is there behind it? Because there's always a story behind resistance. Usually it's they were not felt loved, heard, or supported at a later time or an earlier time in their life, where they're just like, well, this is bogus. Well, who's going to listen to me now? Or I've tried this and I was told this and I got this. There's a lot of different representation of old habits that comes up that gets stored in energies where they're just like, well, no one's going to do this anyway, so why am I going to even come in? Or like when you come into work, it's like, well, no one's going to care about what I say about here today, so I'm just not going to do it. And then that person might feel like the black sheep in the group, or that person might feel like, oh, this person's lack of productivity, right? But it really goes back down to something else.
Yeah, if you speak out, a lot of people are nervous if they speak out. Well, so what I hear you saying is if you're partnered or your boss doesn't really buy into this energy barometer and they don't care, I don't care how you feel right now. This is work. We got to get this stuff done. Buckle up, buttercup. Something like that, right? Then it sounds like you got to get curious as to, okay, I want to be partnered with you. I want to be a good employee. I want to be a good manager. I want to understand what's up with why this isn't getting done, or why you can't get this done, or why you don't care about that I'm kind of overwhelmed right now. And it's about curiosity. And I agree with you. We're always projecting. Michael Brown says 90% of our, when we are when our energy is below the power and freedom line, 90% of what comes out of our mouth is a reaction. And it's always a projection, a reflection and a projection from the past. Like the
past triggers.
The past then projects how the person felt. So then they cast it on that person. And so I just love this energy. Do you have like a visual energy barometer you give to people, or how do you bring this into families? How do somebody hires you as their coach, and they say, I got to bring this into my family. We got to,
it comes with time. So when it comes into families and how we adapt it into families is I really work with the parents first. And I really ask them, like, because I have to, if they can adapt and understand their own energy checks first, that's where it has to come from. Then I started doing it with their partners or grandmas or whoever is present in their house.
It kind of goes to,
who's everyone else in your house that comes in? And we have to have that. And then I bring it to the children. Then I bring it into like, do you realize that maybe that child's having a meltdown versus tantrum? Maybe this person's having a meltdown. And maybe that meltdown was because, they just didn't like the strawberries. Maybe comes in, but they don't know how to communicate that. So they're having this outburst, right? And once these outburst comes in, but once you understood, you're like, oh, it was just because of this texture. And it could take you months to figure that out. I don't know.
And it could be, if they've got autism, it could be a texture or
100%
or
something, right? But it's like you got to really comes down with that. But it has to start with the parents first. And really starting with your individual self first I've learned even after doing my own energy checks, like everyone was like, oh my God, Bina's the extrovert. Bina's the extrovert. Bina's like live and this and that. And when people really get to know who I truly am, I'm actually a true introvert. Yeah. I like the quiet house. I like the stuff calm. I like comes in. So it's so it's like this weird thing where they're like, oh my God, I see you on social media and I see you out here. I was like, yeah, but that's my job. Like, that's my work. My true house is calm. My kids are not, but that's just them on their levels.
Let's talk about the kids.
Yeah.
How easy is it for children to adapt? You know, when you were talking, I was thinking about Inside Out. And everybody loves, especially the new one. If you haven't seen it, have you seen it?
Oh, we have. My kids are here.
You have, yeah. When Riley is spinning out, it is just so magnificent. I think those Pixar authors or creators are just
brilliant.
So what I loved is here Riley is spinning out and anxiety is just out of control. Anxiety is even more than anxiety can handle. And Joy is over there crying, and so is everybody else because there's no space for anybody else.
Yeah.
So kids love that. How do kids respond to your energy barometer?
They love it. They love it. And I tell parents when things are super chaotic in your house and your energy level is like depleted and the household is like they're like bouncing off walls, I tell parents, I was like, I promise you, if you bring down the music, turn down the lights, sit in the middle of the room, meditate. And if you meditate, sound bath, whatever it is that you do, like put some guided imagery on, like talk about those types of stuff, like it really, truly gravitates those kids towards you. And when they do gravitate towards you, it might take in the beginning, you guys, I want to be very clear. The first time you do this, it might take you 3 hours for them to come to you. It might take you 5 hours. This is not something that comes overnight, right? Now it takes my kids 10 minutes. By the time I sit down, comes up. And once I get them into my world, it's just like with Riley and Inside Out. I give them a big hug because, when we have that hug, the release of thousands and thousands of oxytocin comes out. Right. And then all of a sudden they go from this fight or flight stage to maybe a freeze or fawn state. But all of a sudden they're just like, can we have a conversation? And then I ask them, how are you doing today? How are you feeling in this moment?
You're talking about all those things, the music, the sound bath, the quiet, the sitting, I call it the Ram Dassing. It regulates their nervous system. They're human too. And if they're anxious and we're anxious, it's like at work, right? Conflict at work. This guy's really angry and this person's really scared, but their nervous systems are both dysregulated. They're never going to get to connection because they're not there. Their adrenaline and cortisol is just too far. So I love that. So calm the nervous system. And then you said they come to you because they feel safe or they need the nurturing. Their intuition knows they need to be snuzzled.
Yeah. It's because it's you, and even in workplace and at home.
Yeah.
Anytime there's conflict, people are not going to come to you if they feel that you're going to either discriminate, slander, get defensive,
make fun of, tease.
All these different stuff.
Or threaten.
Excuse me.
Threaten. Bless you.
Right. And there's different levels on that. And I understand that. But if you come from a place where I'm ready to listen to you and not project my feelings onto you. And as a mother, this is very difficult. You're mad, you're frustrated, they may have broken 5,000 things in your house. I don't know. And you're sitting there and you're asking this child, how are you? Can I have a hug? What's going on? And then you just sit in the power of the pause, right? Sometimes they don't want to say anything. They're just holding you. And I've done this multiple times where I'm hugging my child and I'm crying because I'm so frustrated. I'm so beyond frustrated, but it's not worth, like, you nailed it when it's like once me and or an adult is so, and this happens with me and my husband when we're both fighting and we're in a heated argument, right? You'll see me sit down. Like you can ask him, you'll see me just literally sit down. I'll cry, not say a thing, and I meditate, I do whatever I need to do. I come in and then he'll come back to me too. And he'll say the same thing. He says, I'm sorry. I mean, sorry is a big thing in our house, but that's a whole nother conversation. It's just like, he'll just ask me, be like, where's your energy right now? And I'm like, I'm at a 0. I'm depleted.
I have nothing left to give.
I got nothing left to give to you.
I want to underscore this compassion because, we are emotional intelligence. There's so many good things that you're saying. I remember when I was in the recruiting industry and I started using my first assessment, and there was one competency called, or personality trait called, emotional regulation. It didn't say it like that, but that's what it meant. And a 1 was you're really high strung, you're boom, 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 everything is now, exaggerated sense of urgency. And a 10, you were like a grandma that wouldn't yell when your kids were coloring on the walls, like whatever. Right. And I could see when I was younger and I was the breadwinner as well. And I was the only breadwinner for the first 10 years. And there was like, I had to get out. I remember with my son, David, he was being potty trained and I wasn't married at the time, and he had to go poo poo. And he was asking me to stop the car and go to the bathroom. But if I was late for work, I would be taken off a rotation. This is how militant my first job was. And I was straight commission sales. If I was taken off of rotation, it meant no candidates that day to place. Right. Even if you were 1 minute late and there were no excuses, talk about the worst thing you could do to people in the world to put them into a trauma. So I'm like saying to the kid, I can't stop. And I was operating in fear most of the time. So I didn't even see how insane that was. But back to the point of, we need to have compassion for ourselves first. And this is why I think you said, you got to learn the energy barometer for yourself, because we do get anxious and upset and all that noise and chaos. Like this morning, somebody was over and they had their baby and he cried the whole time. And he was like almost 2. And he was, no, he's almost like 18 months, but he wouldn't stop crying. And she was trying to do her job and she was really good with it. But I said, I hope you never feel guilty for doing what you need to do, because I think guilt is the opposite of compassion. Or
100%.
The opposite of compassion. And so I really want to underscore that part of your process is people need to have compassion for themselves and their own humanity and their own frustration. And then when they calm down themselves, then they can give that compassion to another human. When you don't have compassion for another human's journey, you're not really somebody who has compassion for your own. Whether you lie to yourself or not about that. And not you, but I mean.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. And there's a good analogy I tell people with energy check that a lot of people resonate with is, when our cell phones go to like 20%, it goes into that power saving mode.
Yes.
Even for some people, when their cell phones go to like 50%, they're searching and stretching and finding cables all over their house. Let's plug in my phone. Let's plug it in. It's only at 80%. My mom, grandma, it's 80%. I need to plug in my cell phone. It needs to be at 100%. So I always challenge people, if you need your cell phone to be at 100%, why are you not at 100% every day?
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Okay. And if you're panicked, I mean, I know people that are panic stricken. Everything is stopped when they're at 20% in their cell phone, so they can go buy a new battery or a charger.
They do whatever they do.
Great. And the power saving mode. Such a good analogy. That's such a good analogy.
And I always tell people, we always want to give. We always give in an overflow state. So if you are at 100% every day, And again, this is where self-regulation comes in. This is when meditation, this is like your work in your marriage, your work with your children, the work with your companies, like telling your boss, like asking
work
your
with
boss,
your team.
Beams, right. This
team.
is all of this. This encompasses everything, right? And if we work from a place at 100% and we are giving at the overflow state, so I have that extra 20% to give, right? Then you're coming from a true place of enlightenment. You're coming from a true place of self-worth. You're coming from a true place of self-authenticity because your boundaries are really high. Your boundaries comes in. Your communication to your boss might be like when your child is like, well, either I like just given that example, like there's probably a lot of trauma around that, a lot of guilt, shame comes in.
I'm sure there's trauma for him too. He's probably anal retentive and he hasn't told me.
But do you see what I'm saying? Like, but that's a great example where you have to make a choice between being late to work or coming down. It was horrible. Like, but that's what I'm saying. But now at least in 2025 or 2024, then this year, like, I'm really hoping that, parents don't have to go through that. Parents don't have to comes in. You're able to have this communication.
So let's not hope. Let's actually create it.
Yeah.
People experience themselves as empowered, resourceful, and whole, and that they will say what works. Like, had I had more self-esteem when I was 21 years old, had I believed in myself, I didn't even know I was a top producer. Like, that was hidden from my view. Everything was fear-based. So I would never have said, I'm going to be 10 minutes late when my boy needs something and you're not taking me off a rotation because then I'm not going to work here anymore. Like, I would have never thought of saying that, where now I would say, I'm going to be late. Here's what's going on. And you can count on me to give 100% when I get there. But I no buts. I think each and every human being that brings value to an organization needs to ask what they need for. Now, if you don't know that you're bringing value to an organization, you need to find out how to measure your contribution. Mm-hmm. And when you know you are contributing, you are moving that organization forward, and you can stand in and love yourself. I just read this great book. I highly recommend it for you too, Coach Bina. It's called Love Yourself for Everyone Else's Sake by Mark Abramson. He is a Stanford. He started the Stanford Mindful Clinic. I just took a meditation retreat with him for 7 days, and wow, I got what I wasn't expecting. He's fabulous, and so sorry, but I mean, I am so committed. Especially moms are liberated, and that they don't feel trapped in their own insecurity and not ask for what they need, especially when it comes to raising these little humans that are going to grow up with a lot of wounds if we keep the same behavior in the workplace that we had in 1983.
Right. And I mean, I remember even my parents like having to drop us off to, babysitters at 5 a.m, staying home late. Yeah. Like, it's just like, I love what you said, because now, even, yes, 5 years ago, I had the courage to finally say, I'm leaving bedside and this is what I'm doing. But I would not have had that courage if I was not already embedding this energy check-in world into my life, because I was very then blessed that my husband finally was just like, quit. Like, do what you need to do. Like, I mean, here, my family, my mom, my sister, everyone's like, you're leaving a stable job. I'm like, it's not stable. I'm trapped. That's a trapped world.
Yeah, it looks stable to everybody else, but it's
not.
It's not stable in here. That's so good.
Energetically, it's not stable. Like, I'm not emotionally stable. I'm not at my best. I'm not the best nurse at the bedside. And then I'm definitely not coming home to be the best mom. Like, that was an energy real fact check for me, where I'm like, okay, I'm not happy here, and I'm definitely not bringing it home. I'm not happy here, which is causing a big relationship shift between me and my husband, which is causing things. And that's where the energy check has to come in, is that, I was scared to leave my multi-6-figure.
It's got to come in, not just in your mood of the moment and how you're feeling about the dishes. It's got to come in probably every area of life that's important to you. How energy, electric is energy,
Right.
radio waves are energy, we're energy. So it's like, where am I at on the vibrational scale?
Right.
If I'm, I talk to some people at work and they're in frustration 40% of the time, or in fear. Why? Well, how much are you bringing in, like we talked about, projection and reflection, and how much is in the environment? Because it's always, it's not less than 50-50, because we're always bringing ourselves to the table.
Yep.
So if we were going to wrap up, my mom has given me feedback. My mom is 85. She said, she calls me, what does she call me? Probably Margaret. Margaret, people will lose interest after 40 minutes on a podcast. So, because she watches TikTok and all this stuff, and the news all the time. But if you were going to wrap it up for people, if somebody's watching you and they say, well, I can't hire Coach Bina right now, but I like this idea of an energy barometer. Could you take a minute or two to walk us through the actual energy? I get the battery. I get the battery in the phone. I get that. I get it. But like, if I'm Barb Mitchell and I'm listening and I've got these kids that have challenges, and I might even have a husband that has a challenge, I might even have a boss that's a challenge. How do I do a quick, could you walk us through, model your own in 2 minutes or less?
Yeah, the best way is, and I really sit down with these women and or men, and I really ask them, create your life. What does your dream day look like without all the chaos? From morning to night. How do you want to wake up? How do you want to drive your kids to school? How do you want your relationship with your kids? How do you want your relationship with your husband? How do you want the money to come into your life? How do you want to be projected? And what is your eulogy? If you had to die today, if something happened to you right here, right now, what would you want people to state, or what would you want people to say about you? And not in a negative way, like she was a mother of three, it comes up. I'm talking about, what legacy do you want to imprint? And I think once people really sit down with what they actually want, not what they were told, makes a big difference.
Like, instead of being a mother of three, I loved three beautiful souls into adulthood, versus I did all the struggles of mother.
Right.
So it's not the roles, it's the purpose.
It's the purpose.
That the only thing once you have purpose, or what else?
No, because then once you really realize, okay, this is, I have these three beautiful children, and they take up a lot of energy, but you know what? I really want to get back to painting. I want to get back to dancing. I want to you really need to go back to, what was your fun? What was your fun when you were younger? What was your fun? And I tell people, I'm like, go back to the earliest memory that made you laugh. What was that? Because the minute we are embodied with these energy check, we have to remind ourselves that as adults, we lost how to have fun. We lose it.
When you ask them, think of fun, where were you? What was the first time you laughed?
Yeah.
What would an ideal day? You're bringing them up the energetic, vibrational scale, and then they can experience that. And the other thing I want to underscore is, this is self-care.
Yeah.
It's not selfish, it's self-care.
Yeah.
And so now that they do the vibrational scale, or the visualization of what they really want, what do you recommend? Again, if they can't afford Coach Bina, not everybody can. That's why we do podcasts. But there are some people that are going to say, I'm in the nursing industry, I could use her. Yeah. Or even not in the nursing industry, but just like what you had to say. What do you do once after you feel that way? Then do you have to go pray? Do you have to go walk around the block? Do you have to meditate?
I tell people,
how do you stay there?
I tell people, change one habit. And I tell, one good thing I tell women is, turn your bathroom into a spa. If you're showering, turn your bathroom into a spa. What I mean by that, aromatherapy, candles, it is your sanctuary. Like, turn that into what you do. So you look forward to having a bath. Is not this rushed kids with kids and all these other stuff. Choose a time and a place choose one thing, whether it's the dishes, you want to do it, then do it with a candle, do it with aromatherapy, do it with something else. If it's a walk, turn your cell phone off. Or if you're listening to earpods, put your phone on airplane mode and go for a walk, and that's it. Like, just do that one thing that you want to go. If you want to dance and movement.
You're saying visualize it, feel it. So here's the recipe. Visualize it, feel it, and take action. Yeah. Step into it. Because otherwise it seems like you're rusing yourself with it, I want all this, but I'm not going to do anything about it. Really good. 3-step process. I love it. So Bina, tell us how to reach you. How do we find you if we want you to coach us? If we resonated with anything at all you said and we want to read your literature, whatever it is, how do we reach you?
So either you can follow me on Instagram, which is Nurse Coach Bina, or on LinkedIn, which is also Nurse Coach Bina.
Okay, great. No website?
I do have a website. It's binanursecoach.com. And there's a lot of information on there. It comes up, but I'm not going to lie. A lot of my information that I'm pouring into the world is either on IG or on LinkedIn. And I personally just found that it's just easier to connect because you can just hit comment, thumbs up, chat.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I'll make sure to comment and chat because you and I are very aligned in our work. We're very, very aligned. I really intend on our paths crossing again. Sure, we'll see each other at a conference. We're both in the Bay Area. Thank you so much for coming today. And I wish you the very, very best. And for the friends watching, stress is a normal part of life. And we must have compassion for ourselves. And if you don't know how to do that, check out Mark Abrams' book, Love Yourself for Everyone Else's Sake. It really is important that we give ourselves love and compassion. We're living in some really funky times right now.
Yeah.
And this is not about mental health necessary, but we're all want to be healthy. We all want to be emotionally well. Well-being is the source of happiness. And so please put yourself as a priority. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you,
Bina. Bye.
Bye.